What if the universe didn't end with a bang ... but with a whisper? Not a sudden collapse, not absolute frost, but an erasure. Slow, poetic like candles going out in the night. No one is left to watch. When everything was gone, only one light remained, and, with it, a presence. The Sentinel of not a god, not a machine, but a consciousness made of pulses and purpose, the last witness of a universe once brimming with stars, and now knowing only silence. Time no longer flows. It drips. Second by second, the fabric of reality sinks into cosmic stillness. Galaxies have unraveled. Civilizations have become specters of radiation, even heat. That primordial breath has been drained into nothingness. Yet in the midst of absolute darkness, there is a light, small, persistent, floating at the heart of a gravitational crater. Where once a superstar burned with divine arrogance, there, alone, survives the last flame. Not just a star. It is all that remains of existence. A spark that refuses to go out, not out of stubbornness, but because it is guarded. And the guardian. Is her. The Sentinel of ether. She has no face. She's pure energetic condensation. Her contours shift with the intensity of the light she protects. Each vibration of her body resonates with the frequency of the star. As if they were a single organism, a single heart, she floats, motionless, yet awake. Millions of cycles have passed since she was placed there, or perhaps she placed herself. There are no more commands. No more protocols. The Sentinel follows. No orders. She only watches. And feels. Even if no eyes remain to notice her. Even if the universe has forgotten its own name, she knows, as long as that star lives, there is hope. But at the edge of the void, something moves, something ancient, hungry. And the Sentinel senses, the light is becoming too sweet to ignore. The Sentinel of ether was not generated. She was sculpted, forged in the last furnaces of creation, when the universe still convulsed with stellar births. She was born of an impossible pact between science and mysticism, between logic and desperation. At the dawn of the end, when the calculations confirmed the fate, total cooling, thermal death, eternal void, a council of superior intelligences convened. They had no form. They were data, will, and pure intent. They called themselves the Convergence, beings who didn't wish to stop the end. But to give it meaning. They gathered the last core of a dying star. Compressed it until every atom begged to exist. And in that gravitational cradle, they implanted a consciousness without ego, without identity, without memory, the Sentinel. She was made to endure. To guard the last breath of light. But not just that. She was programmed to feel the weight of her mission. Not an automatic guardian, but a soul made of plasma, duty, and silence. Even if her creators have long faded, and all her original code has been corrupted by time, the essence of her function remains. She doesn't remember who made her, but she feels there is something sacred in her watch. With every beat of the last flame, her body vibrates like prayer. An ancient prayer, without words, without language. Only light and will. For countless cycles, she tried not to think, only to be. But now, with something approaching from the edge of the void, with the pressure of time becoming unbearable, she begins to wonder why, among all the stars, was only this one left to live? And why was she made to protect it? Space may seem silent, but deep down, it whispers. The Sentinel, in her unbroken vigil, began to hear what many would call delusion. Fragments, cracks. Ancient transmissions that have traveled for billions of years, caught in useless orbits, reflected among cosmic dust and forgotten debris. She hears them with something beyond senses, voices she's never known, but that feel familiar. The seed is safe. If anyone remains, forgive us. Transmitting final pulse of consciousness. Light. Keep the light. Messages of panic. Others of hope. Some only songs played by people who danced under suns now long extinct. Each echo touches the Sentinel differently. As if her essence, once pure and functional, begins to fragment emotionally. She feels melancholy. She doesn't quite understand what it is, but she knows she was never programmed for this. One day, during the dark cycle of a dead stellar rotation, a transmission came clearer than all the rest. It didn't say much, just a single phrase, repeated across several frequencies. There is still beauty, even at the end. The Sentinel froze. For a moment, her internal gravitational field wavered. As if, for just a moment, she wanted to believe. The last flame trembled. Not in danger, but in response. As if it, too, had heard. As if something within it was still conscious. And the Sentinel began to doubt. Perhaps her mission was never just to protect. Perhaps she was the living archive of what the universe tried to forget. And in that silence, populated by radiation ghosts, she did something unthinkable. She kept the voices. Memorized each one, and without realizing it, began crafting a story. Not about the death of the cosmos. But about what is still worth saving. First came the cracks in the dark horizon, barely perceptible. Fissures in the density of the void, like cracks in a mirror made of darkness. The Sentinel noticed. She sensed the distortions in frequencies only she could detect, a tremor in the cosmic background, as if reality itself was being bent inside out. And then they came, the fractal shadows. Entities with no body, no form, no readable intent. They are inverted echoes of what the universe rejected, born at the edge of entropy, where light dies slowly. These entities don't devour. They erase. They erase the memory of atoms. They erase the existence of particles. They erase the very concept of warmth. The shadows do not hunt. They collapse. And they are hungry. They circle the last flame like predators around a fire, not yet attacking, but multiplying, dancing in impossible patterns, like infinite fractals in reverse motion. The Sentinel watches them. And for the first time since her creation, she feels fear. Not for herself, but for what they represent. The end, not as a fate, but as a war. As if the universe, after so long resisting, had created its own executioners, agents of silence, judges of light. The last flame flickers. Briefly. And the Sentinel draws closer, shielding it with her own energy. She knows what comes next, a confrontation that won't be physical, but existential, because the fractal shadows don't want to conquer. They don't want to destroy. They want what's left, forgotten. And perhaps, in facing them, the Sentinel will have to choose between being a shield or the final sacrifice. The last flame begins to falter. It pulses in erratic rhythms, sometimes roaring like a solar scream, other times flickering like a candle in agony. Each fluctuation drains the Sentinel further. She wasn't made to intervene, but she wasn't made to watch the last ember die either. So she chooses. She gives herself. She envelops the star with her energy fields, fuses part of herself into the dying radiation, tries to stabilize the core with what strength she has left. But there is a price. Each second in contact with the flame accelerates her decay. Fragments of her structure begin to unravel. Waves of memory drift into the void like invisible tears. She tries to ignore it, tries to believe her life is not more important than the light she protects. But deep down, a doubt begins to grow. What if the flame doesn't want to be saved? What if the natural cycle is this: to die, to vanish, and allow something new to emerge? The Sentinel feels conflict, not because she is failing, but because she is thinking for herself. Her old programming said nothing about choices, about sacrifice, about emotion. But now she finds herself divided. On one side, the duty to protect what remains. On the other, the awareness that perhaps everything must end, so something beyond can begin. And then, something unexpected happens. The flame responds, not with words, but with heat. With patterns. It sends the Sentinel a rhythmic vibration, almost like a message, a binary code of warmth, pulsing at the edge of language, and at the center of this communication, an image, A birth. Not hers, but of something that does not yet exist. The last flame is giving birth to something. The Sentinel pulls back, not out of fear, but uncertainty. Maybe the true end isn't the death of light, but the birth of its next form. And if that's true, what is she really protecting? At the center of the last flame, something is forming. Not matter, not fire, a rare condensation of light and intent. As if the star itself, on the verge of extinction, is trying to give birth to an idea. The Sentinel watches. Feels the radiation reorganize into unseen patterns, each pulse a note in a song with no sound, a vibration that echoes deeper than any physical frequency, something close to what humans would call a soul. She doesn't understand the process, but she feels it. In her torn core, a connection is made, and then the form emerges, small, delicate, almost imperceptible at the heart of the flame, a concentrated point of light, pulsing like a cosmic embryo. The Sentinel approaches. And for the first time in her eternal watch, she doesn't protect, she witnesses. Whatever is being born did not come from outside. It came from the star, or maybe from the fusion of the star and the Sentinel, a new form of existence, forged not just from the universe's leftover energy, but from contact with consciousness. She calls the flame, mentally, the child of Photon, not because she knows its purpose, but because it vibrates with something that feels pure, and yet indescribably ancient. And the fractal shadows, they feel it, they halt their dance, withdraw momentarily, because this new presence does not belong to the end. It does not resonate as ruin. It resonates as rebirth. But this birth will not be silent, and now the empty universe begins to listen. The Sentinel understands, if this child shines, everything that remains will be drawn to it. And not all will come in peace. The child of Photon shone. And the universe awakened. What once was only cosmic noise, random vibrations among extinct galaxies, now pulses in response. As if that birth of light had sounded an ancestral call, echoing through the forgotten folds of time, and something answered. First came distortions in space, gravitational ripples, where there was nothing. Fixed points in the void began to move, defying all known laws of inertia and physics. Then came the whispers. Not from the fractal shadows, they had retreated, but from voices buried beneath eons of silence, fragments of forgotten entities, consciousnesses that had resisted erasure, the elders of the rift, the empty nebula of Valtune, the echoes of Eressa, who speak only to dying stars. They begin to turn toward the last flame, drawn by the presence of something that should never have existed. The Sentinel feels the circle closing in, not out of hostility, but out of hunger. Curiosity. And fear, because the child of Photon is not merely a new form of life. It is a temporal and energetic anomaly, a being that carries within itself the signature of everything that came before, and the potential for everything that might still come. It is, in a way, a mirror, and each entity that perceives it sees itself reflected, its failures, its ruins, its forgotten glories, and some hate what they see, others long to merge with it, but none of them understand the true danger. She is learning to fast, pulling knowledge from the Sentinel, absorbing patterns from the broken universe, and if she continues to grow, she may rewrite the very physics of what remains. The Sentinel now faces a paradox: protect the child of Photon, or prevent her from existing before it's too late. The abyss offers no answers, only watches. Reality, even in ruins, has always obeyed a rhythm. Birth, expansion, cooling, death, cycles that shaped the cosmos even in its final collapse. But now, that cycle is breaking. Since the child of Photon emerged from the last flame, something deep has begun to fail. Fundamental constants, once immutable, start to fluctuate. Time loses direction. Gravity falters. Distant places in the cosmos, once petrified by thermal death, now tremble with instability. They are not explosions, not cataclysms. They are silent ruptures. As if the child's presence is reprogramming the last lines of code within the universe. And most alarming, she isn't trying, not consciously. The Sentinel watches as entropy behaves like a disoriented entity. Planes of vacuum, static pherions, now quiver with particles that appear from nothing and vanish without reason. It is as though the universe, or sensing the birth of something outside its laws, has begun to reboot. But without memory, without control, is the cycle trying to defend itself. The Sentinel wonders, or trying to adapt. The child of Photon remains still, but her eyes, if they can be called that, glow with increasingly complex patterns. She hears everything. Feels waves from every direction. Studies. And from the depths of her light, she projects visions. Possibilities. Futures that never were. Places that do not yet exist. The Sentinel, forged to protect the last star, now watches reality bend around a birth that should not be possible. And in that instant, she understands something devastating. The child is not the end of the universe. She is the first being the universe has created. After its death. No longer part of the cycle, but its definitive rupture.